What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're going to talk about the expanded meta with Sword and Shield in the format now, and also the new rule change for turn 1. This will be going into effect for Collinsville Regionals. I'm sure there's some expanded League Cups and stuff going on too, but Collinsville Regionals, the week following OCIC, will be the first major tournament with the expanded format with Sword and Shield with the new turn 1 rule. So I've got a few fellow members of Team Gas here, and we're going to talk about some first impressions for the new expanded format. Guys, why don't you introduce yourself? We'll go Dallas, Kieran, Tate.
Hey, I'm Dallas Wright, newest member to Team Gas. Been playing since 2015. Got a smattering of day 2s under my belt, and that's about it.
What is up, guys? It's Kieran. You know me. Yeah.
All right, that's all we got from Kieran.
Yeah, no more.
It's probably good.
Top 8 regional recently, so you should have said that, bro, but whatever. All right,
Tate's
I'm
got you.
Tater, Focus Sets, playing for like 3.5 years. Worst member of Team Gas, but I'm gonna
Debatable.
win also. Yeah, debatable.
A new challenger has approached.
So the internet's been looking for expanded content. We're hitting them with it today. Quick shout out to PotownStore.com, best place to get all of your PTCGO codes before we get into this, before I forget to do that. Links in the description below. But we're going to start out with talking about the turn 1 rule. So the player going first cannot play supporter cards on their first turn anymore. That's for both standard and expanded. We've seen a ton of talk and a lot of testing and whatnot for standard format with that new rule, but expanded's a whole different monster. So Tate, what do you think about the rule in expanded? You can give your feelings on it, if it should have been done, how it's going to affect the meta, certain decks, whatever you want to go for.
Yeah, so I was honestly worried about this rule change for expanded when it was announced. Like, I thought it would be pretty healthy for standard, but I was worried about, decks being able to pop off so much in expanded that it would actually be a really huge benefit to go second. But so far in testing, that hasn't really been the case. I feel like the rule is not really that unhealthy in expanded either. I think it's brought an interesting twist to the format, where you have decks that want to go first, you have decks that want to go second, you have decks that aren't really affected, which not coincidentally I think end up being some of the stronger decks in the format maybe. But yeah, I'm overall pretty satisfied. It's been interesting in terms of deck building, and I've enjoyed it.
Cool. Dallas, how about you?
So I've been playing exclusively expanded since the rule change took effect online, and I can say I kind of mirror what Tate was saying, where I think that a lot of decks are adapting to it. I think we're seeing a lot more Pokemon based draw that helps you get out of the turn 1 slump without a supporter. I will say the rule change is making me nervous to play standard eventually, but I'm going to worry about that later.
Yeah.
Just I don't know if I can rely on just one Dedenne to get me to where I want to be, but yeah, I think it's interesting that I'm always saying go second unless depends on the deck I'm playing, but more often than not, I'm deciding to go second. And I think that we're going to see that mirrored a lot through Collinsville. I think that you got to be prepared for opponents to win flips and say they're going second, and then you got to just not brick turn 1.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Kieran, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I also have not played any standard, just been on expanded, so I can't really talk about standard at all, but people are like complaining about it. From what I've seen, people really have not liked it so far. But the only thing like I noticed, I played like a couple games with like decks built the way they were before the rule change, and it's just like just build your decks better, like just adjust your deck building to like the rule change and playing the game with the rule change. Like you just have to figure out how to things like you, instead of playing like one ability based draw guy, maybe you play the second one so that you're sure you're not going to prize it if you like lose the flip and they make you go first. Or like playing, instead of just playing your 4 Ultra Ball, maybe throwing some Quick Ball in there so you have like additional outs to hitting more things without supporters. It just requires some adjustment. But I think it's going to be good for the game as a whole. Because, I mean, people are going second now, and people haven't been doing that for a while. And it's like the biggest rule change to come to the game that doesn't, isn't worth another prize card. So at
Yeah.
least it's not a 4-prize Pokemon. Let's just think about that.
Yeah.
Remember how caught off guard it used to be when someone would say, I'm going second after winning the flip?
Oh my god,
Yeah, every time I made a comment about it, and now it's just going to be par for the course.
It was like a Night March mirror, or they weren't very good at Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's gonna be like, oh, fair choice. You might be better than me. Choose to go second.
Wow, that's a confident move.
Yeah. So the rule change, I think, is going to be pretty cool. I don't think it like turns the game upside down or anything, but like Kieran said, deck building just gets a little different. And I mean, deck building changes from meta to meta and sets to sets anyway, so it's just another deck building adjustment, which in my opinion does leave good deck builders at the advantage in the beginning of the meta for something like Collinsville for expanded and OCIC for standard. I think good deck builders that are also good players are at a real advantage because of this rule change. So yeah, let's get into talking about some of the new cards and even maybe some older cards that are good in the upcoming meta, or from what we think is good in the upcoming meta. I want to start off with a VMAX Pokemon, since VMAX are not getting a ton of love in standard. We talked about it a bit in my OCIC meta discussion, which you can find on the channel, and the guests were not really hype about VMAX Pokemon going into the initial standard format, but there is a lot of talk about Snorlax VMAX in expanded. Snorlax VMAX with the Gmax fall for 3 colorless energy does 60 plus 30 more damage for each of your benched Pokemon, and because expanded has Skyfield, that means you can do a ton of damage with this for just a triple. Does anyone have anything to say about Snorlax VMAX?
It's kind of linear.
It's
It's all
fine.
too linear.
Yeah, I think so too. It's essentially it's a better Mega Ray, just because of having more HP and being able to do more damage. But yeah, it's just way too linear. Like, you're playing a deck that's basically just a big 3-prize guy with fighting weakness and nothing else in the deck, and only special energy. Really, the big reason that I would just never play Snorlax to this event is because Sudowoodo counter energy is so good right now, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the video. But yeah, that just destroys Snorlax.
Right. Any other thoughts on Snorlax?
I mean, really, both Sudowoodos give it a hard time, right? Like,
Yeah.
That is true.
It's got 2 different cards named Sudowoodo that give it the hands. That being said, I could see people, getting points with it. I think that if you're confident with it,
it's a solid point getter.
Yeah.
But like, respect it, and you're not gonna like lose to it. I feel like it's a deck that'll run you over, but like nobody played Mega Ray because literally you like just like if you think about Mega Ray once in deck building, if you're like, oh, like maybe I'll play against Mega Ray, I'll just put this in because like if I play against Mega Ray, it's just the type of deck that loses so easily. And also Snorlax is a far more exploitable weakness.
Yep.
And probably has a more, I guess, exploitable engine because at this point in time, from what I've seen, it's looking to focus on the Chinchilla. And that's just, that's just more work. It's just like why play it over a thing that can do a bunch of damage another way? Just play Zation and do a lot of damage that way.
And
Do we think it's going to see a lot of play, even if we don't think it's great?
I think it'll be around. Yeah. I'm expecting to see at least 1, maybe 2.
I would plan to hit it. Yeah.
Okay. So probably be popular, but not a tier 1 contender at this point in time.
Yeah, like everyone
just
said.
Respect it and take a free 3 match points.
Okay,
prepare for it for Collinsville and take your 3 match points and worry about your other 8 rounds.
Yep.
What about the other VMAX Pokemon? So we've got Stonejourner, Morpeko, and Lapras. Do any of them have any potential in expanded?
Stonejourner is raw. Stonejourner is cool.
Stonejourner is probably the best of the 3. I haven't heard of anything with Lapras. I mean, I guess you could do something with like Archies, but that's probably not worth playing. And then Morpeko, I guess Dow is probably
broken.
about this. because Dallas has some thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of people that really loved Donphan back in the day, and Donphan's too slow to play right now. Morpeko does the same thing for 3 energy, does 150, discard and switch with something on your bench, throw up a Wob, and you're good to go. I think that's, a solid deck people can throw together cheaply if you don't want to, shell out the bank for all these fancy VMAXs or Zations or whatever.
Are you playing the VMAX though?
You play one,
Does
probably.
it play?
I'd play one.
Yeah, the standard
Yeah.
iterations.
You want to do like Vileplume and Pyroar and all that stuff. So that's
it's such an easy out to that kind of stuff. Yeah, the standard iterations are Morpeko Doll, and that plays usually just one Morpeko VMAX, so you can have a tankier attacker late game once you're out of dolls. So I guess in this case you would do the same thing, but with Wobs.
And one thing we really skipped over. Yeah, we skipped over talking on the turn 1 discussion. Starting a Wob is super good with the rule change.
Oh
Start a Wob, like that's your game probably.
Yeah,
like it's wild. So I mean, this deck would do that, right? It would be playing 4 Wobs. Now you just gotta have a plan for if you go first and then they can play supporter. But whatever, it's only gonna happen half the time. So
I mean.
As a team, some of the first things that we started like thinking about for this regional was we knew we wanted to test stuff with Wob and we wanted to test stuff with counter energy. Because both of those things, I mean, V Pokemon, we'll talk about this too, but V Pokemon being able to use counter energy is interesting. Like that's something we haven't had before. And then obviously Wobbuffet, with the turn 1 supporter rule, there's more Shamans, more Dedennes, more, it doesn't stop Lele, but Shamans and Dedennes. So Wob's just good.
What were you mentioning there aside from Wob? Oh, counter energy. The V Pokemon in general, something to just keep in mind whenever you get a new mechanic like that. There might be things that not everybody's catching or that like just changes up the meta so much. So now like Hoopa was actually really good. For the Shining Legends, Hoopa was really good in Dallas because it can't be hit by EX and GX. But now we've got V Pokemon on top of that, and they can hit those kinds of things that can't be hit by EX or GX, and they can use things that are restricted off of GX Pokemon, like the counter energy are. So that's something really good to keep in mind. And the Wobbuffet also. I think a lot of people are like in tune with that by now. But even if they aren't, they're finding out now that like locking your opponent from the start of the game if you start Wob is really good. Like Kieran was saying, maybe you want to play extra ball search to get out your Shamans into Denace turn 1. So if you can't play a supporter, and then if your opponent's locking that with Wob, then you just got nothing going for you.
Yeah. It's like your hand better be good, man.
You better have the gas.
Yeah.
With V Pokemon, it's another example of good deck building, being an advantage for you in a new format, because it's not just the rule change, it's also having a totally new mechanic in the game in the form of the V Pokemon. So when you're deck building, you have to consider, things like Choice Band, Great Catcher, Shrine of Punishment. Are these things that are, not that they're necessarily bad cards, but are they worth playing in my list based on the expected meta?
Yeah, and all of those things just kind of go towards cultivating a more skill-intensive game. I mean, like now, like one of the things that I've noticed is like, factoring in the rule change and factoring in you might start against someone that's playing Wob, capitalizing on the rule change. Like you can't build your decks as greedy anymore. You just have to make them like fair and consistent. And in a lot of ways, that's making the game, feel a lot more fair, and also makes it so that the game tends to favor the better player more often. And I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, if that ends up being the reality, that would be nice. Tate, any pet deck, anything that you're liking going into the meta that's been testing well for you?
If I had to pick a pet deck at the moment, I guess I'd just say Ultra Necrozma. I wrote an article about it for Team Rocket's Hideout pretty recently. I've been a really big proponent of playing the auxiliary version of that deck and not the Garbodor version. The reason is just that the Garbodor version feels like it just loses really hard to your opponent playing N. You go down to a couple prizes left, and then your opponent ends you, and you whiff everything. Every piece of your combo, whether it be Double Dragon or Stadium or whatever. So Auxiliary just gives the deck so much in terms of being able to thin out your hand with stuff like Guzman Hala, Great Catcher, all your ball search cards that you play. Auxiliary just has so much power in that deck, and then the Alolan Muck line is still pretty strong. Being able to just go like turn one Silent Lab is pretty similar to the Wob effect of just stopping a lot of decks if they don't have a way to get rid of the lab. And then Ultra Necrozma itself is a really strong attacker. 170 on a single prizer is pretty good. The energy discard is a really underrated part of the card too, I think. It opens up a lot of plays where your opponent will have to kind of make some suboptimal energy attachments to play around it. They have to be wary about where they're putting their energy. It's a pretty interesting effect on that card that gets overlooked a lot. So that deck's been testing really well for me. It's just a matter of figuring out what techs you want to throw in there, because it has a lot of very favorable matchups. Things like Turbo Dark, Zashin's been favorable, things like that. But things like Eggrow are very bad. Any form of stall deck, not very good. So it's just a matter of figuring out what techs you want to play to, improve one or two matchups. But the deck's been testing well, and it's probably in like my top 3 picks for Collinsville.
Did the list for it change terribly much since Sword and Shield?
Yeah, so in comparison to my article list, I basically just added more ball search. One card I've liked a ton is Level Ball because it grabs everything in your auxiliary line, grabs your Alolan Grimer. Then if you play techs like Sudowoodo with counter energy, it'll also grab that. But just being able to set up the auxiliaries consistently is really the key to that deck. So Level Ball has been really big for me. But just in general, playing a really high count of like Nest Ball, Mysterious Treasure, Level Ball, make sure that you can set up your Grimer and your Remoraid and your Ultras on turn 1 without a supporter. And then you can just pretty much start going into like Guzman Hala or Sycamore or whatever, and just drawing through your whole deck and finding your combo every turn. But not really a huge change. There's no real like new Sword and Shield cards that impact the deck that much, I don't think.
Sounds good. Dallas, so talk to me a bit about Zation V and Expanded. We know the card is probably fronting one of the top decks, if not the top deck in Standard. But how does it look in Expanded?
I really like it in Expanded. It's always going to be a back pocket deck if I can't land on something before the event. It just goes, It's got the metal patch. What's it called? The saucer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got metal saucer. It's got the max elixirs. I mean, you can regularly go in if you're going second and attack on turn 1, which is huge because and I haven't seen it as much as I thought I would, but you can definitely just like steal some games by hitting for 230. There have been a lot of discussions about like how do you reset that effect, and I've seen like heavy switch versions, and I've seen Dawn Wings, I've seen Keldeo. I think I've land on Keldeo for whatever build I bring to the event if I do, just because Rush In and Retreat is so good and it can't get attacked for 3 prizes by Guzzlord.
The one bit of what's it called? Dawn Wings would be Wob, right?
Yeah. And I mean, don't play against Wob. Or like that'll only, if that happens, they're probably not attacking you anytime soon either. So you can probably just sit back and set up something and then go in and attack that Wob. Some other things I've found in it that were cool were Cobalion and Cobalion GX specifically, using Iron Rule to get you out of some weird situations, and the ability itself just preventing the Darkrai GX attack. So yeah, I think I would expect to play against 2 in Collinsville, just based on the way it's testing, based on who I'm talking to. A lot of people are liking it. A lot of people are going to fall back on it if they don't find something broken beforehand. Because it's a very fair deck, I think.
We saw a lot of people not really like ADP too much for Expanded. Do you like ADP now in Expanded?
Nah.
Too slow?
Too slow. I don't want to put double dragons in my deck. Yeah, there's kind of a lot of reasons
Ranger.
Ranger's a card that people are throwing in. I don't want to give up 3 prizes right away, because that's another one of the benefits is it's a GX, or it's a V that's doing tag team numbers for 2 prizes, And I think that if you really leverage that advantage, which feels so weird, like, only giving up 2 prizes, but it's real,
Yeah.
I think you really need to play into that advantage in order to see success with the deck.
Cool. Any additional thoughts on Zation?
I think Zacian's broken. I think like I could very realistically see myself playing Zation for. It's just like the new. It feels like the new Evil Toll Maxis. It's like the deck that has the ability to beat anything, and it's just like play well, map out your game, and like play to your outs. And a lot of the time, you're gonna win because you're taking 50-50s and you're playing them better.
Yeah.
Like it's a deck if you learn, it's gonna reward. I can definitely. I'd expect to play 2 to 3 day one. I think if you plan on winning the event, you're going through 4 to 5 Zacians to get there because I think Zacian's really good.
Yeah.
Does it have a way, or have you been seeing ways to beat the anti-basic decks like Pyroar stuff and Eggrowl, or do you just take losses to those rogue decks? Or I guess Pyroar is kind of rogue, but Eggrowl is kind of a meta deck.
Oh,
I think Hood's definitely fine. I play the counter energy version for sure, and I play a Wob in that. But I also think like Eggrow's kind of, I don't know. Eggrow was like super hyped when the rule change first happened because the whole like you can't play supporters, then you have one turn of items, and you can't play supporters to find more items on that turn that you're trying to play your items. But also like Eggrow feels still really weak. Like it's still slow. And it's still, now that you can't support her turn one, if it goes first and it can't bridge it, sometimes it's just screwed and just loses.
Yeah.
Based on that. So like I'm gonna do my best to respect Eggrow, but I'm expecting to hit one Eggrow, and I'm that, and I'm just gonna respect it so it stays that way, so that Eggrow can remain a bad deck. Because I think Eggrow's a bad deck, but it only stays bad if we all do our due diligence. Respect Eggrow.
And it turns out respecting aggro is like turning into a more versatile play than you think, like throwing in maybe thicker lines of hoods, maybe playing 2 or something. Then you have some game against Wob. You can use Intrepid Sword under the ability,
and Alolan Muck too, and Garbotoxin.
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more versatility from those counter cards that were in there only for aggro. So that's kind of nice that at least you have some use out of those cards that you're going to see. Because I've texted for a lot of decks I've never played against.
Good card right now.
Yeah,
Hood's like an immensely strong card right now.
In Zation, I wouldn't have a problem playing 2 in Zation just because of Wob, Alolan Muck, Garbotoxin.
Almost every deck needs it. I feel like you're either gonna like dedicate space to like a stage 1, or like so many decks can go, okay, I'm gonna play like Wob and Hood and be like, I'm gonna beat like an egg, because like a lot of the time, honestly, when you're like factoring in Eggrow, you're not going, okay, this Eggrow player is insane and gonna play perfectly. Because you're expecting the people that are playing Eggrow to be people that honestly don't really know what they're doing right now. Unless it's a situation where they're just like doing the ultimate amount, like what JW did, just like capitalizing on the meta. But right now it's like bad, and I think it would be fair to assume when teching for Eggrow that most of the Eggrows you're going to play against are not going to be like the most insane players in the world.
Yeah.
Unless Gibby and Grant just try to run it back again.
Yeah.
I mean, they really snuck through in Dallas.
They're talking about chat with them. They keep talking about Eggrow.
Yeah.
You might have to prepare for that.
We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, so Zation V looks like tier 1, I'd say, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'd
Looks
say it's
super
tier
good.
S. I'd say it's the deck right now.
Tier S, we're building up Zation here.
I might agree with that. It's definitely in my top 3, and
it's capable of beating anything. There's nothing that just beats Zation. I mean, unless you tried Tate's little fire deck, but I don't know what. It seems like that didn't
The
turn out
disrespect,
great,
Tate's little fire deck.
Me and Alec Geisler made this fire deck that had like Torkoal in it. It was so bad. We played like 3 games with it, and it was like, yeah, we're never playing this again. The only good thing in the deck was you can play the Victini that does 20 times your bench, and it does like 200 damage with Skyfield Steam Up. That was the only good thing in the deck.
Ooh.
Hey, you want to beat Zacian or not?
It does beats nothing else, but it does beat Zation.
Nice. Kieran, so let's move on to an oldie but a goodie, Mewtwo Mew tag team. So not a new Sword and Shield card, but you played it for Portland and got top 8. You and I both played it into day 2 in Dallas. and you were kind of the Mewtwo like hype man there for a while. What do you think about it? New turn 1 rule, new V cards that it can't use to its advantage.
This pains me to say. I think the deck is actually dead.
No.
Me too.
Like maybe something will happen at some point, and the meta will just look really good for it. But like Mewtwo capitalized on a meta that didn't respect it, and a meta that wasn't just strictly better than it. And like Zation bodies Mewtwo, Snorlax VMAX bodies Mewtwo, and I think in a lot of ways, I think a lot of the tag team decks are going to feel the same thing, because at the end of the day, like, no matter what Mewtwo is doing, you can do 270 damage, but what does that matter when Zacian's taking 3 prizes on you after you just took 2 on? And I think, like, I think Roxy Chomp's another deck people are looking at a lot, and I've tested both of them a bunch in this format, Mewtwo and Roxy Chomp, and I just came to the same result with both of them, which was that, you're still doing broken things, and it's still in a vacuum a very strong and good deck, but it's not good enough for this format. Both of them just get outclassed and power crept by this format.
Mm-hmm.
How does it fare against Wob? Probably not well, right? You need Shaman.
Mewtwo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't fare greatly. Iteration of the deck I've been playing in format play at least one, mostly 2 Lele, and then like the whole 4 male things, so you can still, it's built with the expectation that you're going to be playing against like Wobbuffet decks, but you definitely, Mewtwo is one of those decks that benefited from, as we saw from my list that I played for Dallas, by the end there I was like, okay, I only have to play 3 real supporters.
Yeah, it was very greedy.
Yeah, right. I could just do a bunch of greedy garbage, and Mewtwo was the greediest deck of last format, and like we were just talking about, greed just doesn't excel anymore. You have to be pretty honest. And
it
Mewtwo's
also
not an honest deck.
It also took advantage of greed really well. The first time I played,
it was the greedy that beat other greedy.
Yeah, I didn't start playing Mewtwo until 11 p.m. the night before, so I kind of learned on the go in Dallas. But my opponents were just time after time getting ruined by me just going distort, switch into a new Mewtwo, distort, because they couldn't do anything.
Despair Ray away a tag team, the deck just if you were greedy, the deck just ruined your life for it.
Yeah,
but it got to be so greedy. But then by the time Dallas was so playing in Dallas was not fun at all, because I played against 5 Mewtwo mirrors, and it's just that's just a game of you're both playing a deck that's expecting to be greedy without being punished for it, while punishing the other's greed, and you get paired up against an immensely greedy. So in a lot of ways, it's the matchup is super favored for both players, and then it just becomes really stupid. Luke, we played you that was a really dumb game.
Yeah, you end me to a hand of 4, and I needed a 4-card combo, so you just sat there or end pass, you can't do it, and I was Guzma attach, battle compressor away the correct attacker, Dimension Valley.
Then game 2, I get to go first, and the thing about a Mewtwo mirror is if you go first and you don't do a million things, and literally all they have to they can just distort turn 2, and I go first and play 2 cards. This man has battle compressor, prism energy, Dimension Valley. I'm it was fun.
So Mewtwo, do you think it's still going to be played a bit? Do you think some people bring it to the tournament at Collinsville?
I made people play it for Dallas, so if I can help it, I'm gonna make sure people don't fall for this one.
I think people will play it, to be honest with you. Not a huge amount, but I think people are just gonna fall into the trap of I can play this deck with 20 different attackers in it and just have outs for. They're not really thinking about how the format has changed with the supporter rule, and how, like we've been saying, you can't be as greedy anymore. But I don't think everyone realizes that quite yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
If Mewtwo was played, it would be played if there's a Mewtwo deck that does well, it's going to be built absolutely nothing like the deck was built for Portland.
Right. I'm not saying that people will day 2 with it. I'm just saying I think people will probably still play it in some number.
No, yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, you go 5-2-2 with the deck, get some points, go home.
Yeah.
The dream.
Yeah, distort will get enough people.
Right, distort players that don't know what they're doing, and you'll get 5 points.
Easy.
So,
I've been playing it with like Roxy, and it's cool, but it's like I don't think it's actually like good enough. It's just like cool, and you can do cool things, and it seems like it was probably better and something I should have tested more when Mewtwo is still good.
there are two older decks or two pre-existing decks I want to make sure we touch on. So Trevenant Dusknoir Milotic, that did well in Japan, and I started telling people about it, and they're like, "There's no way that can do anything over here." And Pablo got top 8 with it at Dallas, but I think he was the only one in day 2. So people didn't really believe in it for Dallas, like they thought it was just a Japanese fluke kind of thing. But it did top 8, but now I'm hearing that it's actually really, really good in North America. Tate, what do you think about Trevenant Dusknoir Milotic?
First of all, I think we should give props to Pablo because he was the only person that realized that the deck was actually good. I guess he was the only person that really put any time into it because I think if other people had put time into it for Dallas, they would have realized that it was actually really good. And other people might have day two'd. But
It beat our Dallas deck for sure.
yeah, I think so.
Hard.
Well, Hunter did beat Pablo with
In
the
day
Did
2
he?
Swiss, I think.
Yeah, he did. I don't really know how though. I
I
don't
don't know
think
how you beat that.
yeah.
That's suspect.
So Trevenoir with this format is still good, and the reason is because Trevenoir doesn't care if it goes first or second. So this is what I said at the beginning of the video about like some of the stronger decks in the format are ones that don't care as much about the new rule. Because Trevenoir, going first, you can just set everything up. You can go through your Shamans, Dedenne, everything, Skyfield, just like burn through your deck and then have everything ready to go to pop Milotic next turn. And then if you go second, you get to attack, so you can just Horror House and you have a free turn to set up regardless. So Horror House is an insane GX attack, I think, in expanded with the rule change. And I tested, well, I didn't even test the deck first off. I was mostly like testing my Ultra Necrozma build, and I kept hitting Trevenoir on ladder and just getting ruined by it. Like I would get like 2 Rem Raids down turn 1 or whatever and be like, okay, I'm good to go. And then they would just like Ace Trainer and Horror House and whatever, and I would be screwed. So that led me to actually like ask around, get some updated lists for it and start testing it myself. And I realized that the deck's still pretty good. I mean, the ability to just, it does have some rough, matchup stuff that plays WOB is not great because it needs so much draw power from GXs to set up or Shamans. But yeah, just being able to basically like Horror House and then lock your opponent's hand for the whole game, it's still really good.
Any
It feels
additional
like
thought?
yet
Oh, there we go.
another- Oh, sorry.
No,
sorry.
you're good.
It feels like just like yet another one of those decks that we just have to respect now, because it's like it's like annoyingly strong. It's like almost too good. But it's also one of those things that has literally like no outplay potential whatsoever. It's doing the same thing every time. So if you build your deck with like giving credence to Trevenoir, and you like, if you start a matchup and you're like, oh, I'm playing against Trevenoir, this is what I'm trying to do, and it seems like somewhat feasible that I can do. Whether that's retreating into WOB, whether you figured out some like crazy Trevenoir sock, like whatever you're trying to do. It just feels like one of those things that if you respect it, it becomes a lot worse. But at the same time, like, even more importantly than Aggro, like this one you have to respect. Because I think there's gonna be at least one Trevenoir in Collinsville. Like if there's a 9-0 in Collinsville, I think it's Trevenoir. I think it's the one Trevenoir guy that hit the 9 people that didn't respect it and didn't, think it was actually that good, and just sit there and get their hand shuffled away. Like the deck is really strong. It's just like I would never play it because it's doing the same thing every single time. And when it's not working, you're just sitting there trying to do something that's not gonna work. But it works so often.
Right. That's exactly how I feel, Kieran, is that it's not a deck I would play to this event, but it's absolutely a deck I want to beat for this event.
Yeah.
I've been the guy who's been like throwing that deck at other decks, and I can just say that the worst thing is when they just like top deck a Juniper or something out of it.
It does. It's a feel bad moment. It's like, oh, well, there goes the game, pretty much. But
it is, and I don't think I could ever hinge a game on that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
So in the end, expanded just comes down to whether you draw the stones. It always does.
Roadblock Sudowoodo does a lot of work against the deck.
Oh yeah, that card bodies that deck.
Yeah, if you can slap that down turn 1.
I actually disagree. That I've had this argument with some other people. I think Roadblock Pseudo is like not awful for Trev Noir. I think Wob's really, really bad for it.
Oh, Wob's
Wob's definitely worse, but Trev Noir's or Pseudo's a nice like kind of soft counter that a lot of
it's definitely a soft counter. I mean, all you really need to get down is like a Phoebus and a Trev Noir, or I mean, you need the Gengar Q really, but so it's not like that hard to get. But yeah,
I think the more important thing is drawing the energy. Like you can get your things down, but the deck just doesn't have space to play a lot of energy. So a lot of the time when you're digging, it's because you haven't hit your third energy to actually be able to hit the. And I feel like that, like Pseudo could be the deciding factor a lot of the time because you've already had to dedicate these bench slots. And, maybe especially in a situation where maybe you already have one in hand or one attached, but you only have one in the discard pile, so you can't even pop the melodic yet. So that's taking up a bench spot. It's always something that I feel like will be a consideration, especially as more kind of bench sitters become necessary.
Yeah, you get a bench space back from melodic, which is nice too.
Yeah. But I mean, it's clogged until you get to that point. If you're in a situation where it's like, okay, I can't pop this melodic yet because it would mean this turn, then it's, sometimes it's futile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some collateral damage that Trev Noir could take, like the pseudos, like Wob being good, like heavier consistency counts index being good, but it's also good because it doesn't really care if it goes first or second, like Tate said, and there are going to be a lot of decks that prefer either first or second, I think.
More raw supporters is another thing too, so we might see people relying less on Versus Seeker because Versus Seeker is useless on turn 1 usually. So like if Trev Noir, ace trainers you, if you top deck Versus Seeker, that's not going to help you. If you top deck a Sycamore because you're playing 4 Sycamore or whatever, that's a lot better. So that hurts it too.
And the other deck I wanted to make sure we talked about is Dark. Dark was the end-all be-all of last format, apparently. Everyone acted like it was unbeatable. It did pretty well, but it did pretty well with like the best of the best players piloting it in Dallas. It did not take the tournament by storm at all, like some people were claiming it would. Guzzlord is still a broken card. What do you think about Turbo Dark? Dallas, any thoughts on it?
I think Turbo Dark's tier 1 for sure. I mean, you gotta throw Turbo Dark at every deck you're considering multiple times to really see how that matchup is. Turbo Dark is, as always, like the best deck I won't play just because I know that like I have not played Turbo Dark in a tournament ever. So I'm like, I'm not gonna try and play any Turbo Dark mirrors because they're gonna beat it. I just don't have that experience with the deck that some of these veterans have. So I'm focusing more on making sure that I don't take losses to it. Tate's got the right idea with the Ultra Necrozma. That's a great matchup for it. I think there are a lot of decks that Turbo Dark doesn't want to see, but Turbo Dark can always squeak out anything.
Yeah, I'm in the camp of Turbo Dark is actually maybe a deck I'd consider playing. It's not really like a top pick for me, but it's like a fallback pick just because the deck does feel like it has a fair amount more outplay potential than something like Trev Noir.
Yeah.
Where it just can kind of, it's not limited to that like one single game plan every game. There's different things that can do. Being able to like swing with a variety of different attackers is always really good. Like Trev Noir doesn't have that. Both the Guzzlords are still really good, the Baby and the GX.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think the deck is fine. I definitely don't think it's DIF anymore.
No.
I think it's something you should expect to play against, and your deck should be able to beat Turbo Dark. But I also think, I don't know, I've always been of the camp, like, definitely with, like, Guzzlord and stuff, like, it's gotten more, I guess, outplay potential. And I think, Dallas being the first time a lot of really good players actually picked up the deck because it was the de facto best, made people build it to be a more skill-intensive deck. But it's still, I think there are decks with much higher skill ceilings. Yeah. And I think, like, if I personally ever got to the point where I was seriously considering Turbo, I'd go, okay, well, then I'm going to sit down and grind out games of Zation so that I know Zation well enough that I don't have to play the worst version of Zation.
For sure.
But that's exactly how I feel too. Is that I feel like 80% of the time, Zation is better than Turbo Dark against whatever you're gonna hit.
Yeah, it's just like so many decks want to do similar things, just do 1,000,000 damage with basic energy, like fair. And generally, the way it works is the deck that does that the best becomes a dominating presence in the format, and the decks that don't do it as good as that deck fall by the wayside. So I think Turbo Dark will be relevant in combo. I think Turbo Dark's gonna fall off hard after people realize that it's just worse than Zacian.
Yeah.
It also suffers from the same, just like what I was talking about with Mewtwo and Roxy Chomp, how like it plays tag team and like a lot of things can just out trade it now because you can only dead end once and then you've got a like 2-prizer that hits 130 compulsory. That's not impressive.
Yeah.
That's why I'm still riding, Ultra at the moment, is that I still think Turbo Dark's gonna be popular. Ultra, bodies Turbo Dark and Zacian, and then its matchup spread kind of falls off a bit from there. So it's basically just like if I think people are gonna play, if those are gonna be the top 2 decks, I'll just play Ultra and get like 5 wins off that probably. And if the meta shifts in a different way, then you got to play something else.
Yeah, I think Turbo Dark still does a lot of very good things in a vacuum. Like, it has a GX attack that one-shots something. It has Zoro Ninja that does 1,000,000 damage for 2 energy. It has a few different ways to excel energy. It has Guzzlord from Cosmic Eclipse that fixes its 1-prize matches to at least a close matchup instead of a dumpster fire. But then Zacian V has a Pokemon that just draws you cards and it can attack 230 for 3 energy on board. You don't need however many energy Zoro Ninja would need. 6 energy to reach 7 energy to reach 240. Zacian needs 3 energy on board, swinging 230, and it's only a 2-prizer.
And then a muscle band, and then you took 3 prizes, and then Turbo Dark sucks again.
Yeah, so Turbo Dark has...
And use Timeless GX, which is effectively a Guzzlord against single prizers.
Yeah. Timeless GX is I'm surprised that didn't come up organically because Timeless GX has always been an insane GX attack that nothing could take advantage of, and now there's a deck that can take insane advantage of it. Timeless GX is
So Timeless GX, for anyone that doesn't know, it's on Dialga GX, and Dialga has a metal printing and a dragon type printing.
One of which is good and one of which is bad. Match to one of them.
Probably
yeah. But yeah, Timeless GX sounds really good. And you can also just play like counter energy attackers, like I've seen a bunch of people post lists about. I know JW posted one on his channel, Flex Daddy Righteous, with counter energy and then a couple different single prize attackers. So you don't just scoop to a single prize deck that outtrades your Zacian.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you know what Timeless GX does during turns.
Yeah.
Hit us with it, Dallas. Do you know what it does?
If you do it turn 1 a time, it is now turn 3 a time.
Dang.
Oh, okay.
What?
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it happened to me in Portland like 2 years ago or something. And we had a time extension, so it didn't actually happen. But there was a judge sitting there who was like, "And now it's your opponent's turn, and you don't play anymore this game."
Oh,
and
man.
And
you were like, "No, we have a time extension."
Woo, yeah, man, it's gnarly. So if you're thinking about tying some games, some use.
I would have to keep that in mind. That's pretty
keep
fun.
That in mind, yeah.
Yeah, that's
we're gonna
sick.
have some salty players in Collinsville if that ends up.
Oh yeah, like I think if it happens to you, call a judge still, just to make sure.
Expanded makes me throw deck boxes, and I'd have done well in Expanded, so I don't even want to know what we're going to be doing in Collinsville when they get back.
We're gonna have people play N on turn 1, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's gonna happen the whole time.
You just like a pattern of hands go up 30 seconds after the turn starts.
Probably we're gonna have people playing Cynthia.
Marnie.
Yeah.
If that happens on stream, I'm.
Oh wow.
What happens first? We get a game loss because someone shuffles off of Marnie, or someone turn 1 in?
Turn 1.
Yeah.
Turn 1. It's probably already
Probably.
Yeah.
It's literally going to be like 30 seconds into the tournament and someone's already going to be crying because it's round 1. They're just tired as shit, and it's Cynthia. Tired as heck.
Or Reklev shuffles his... Yeah.
Yeah, judges got their work cut out for them this format.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
So we've been talking for 45 minutes about Sword and Shield
Oh,
Expanded. I'm gonna do another one of these videos on the channel next week, so I'll have plenty to catch up on from all the things I'm sure the comment section will let me know that we missed. Yeah, but if you guys want to do your shout outs and just any like last tidbit of expanded information, we'll go Tate.
Yeah, shout out to, well, I guess just everyone on the team. Me, some guys outside the team: Alec Geisler, Mike Morton, Carter Barsh. I played some games with Hunter Butler. Yeah, they've all been super helpful with testing for this format. Like I said, I'm really just focused on Expanded right now, you know, trying to kind of break the meta, do really well for Collinsville. So yeah, I've been excited to have all that help with that. Also, obviously, ptcgstats.com, at PokeStatsTCG on Twitter. All your number crunching for the Pokemon trading card game is all there.
Word. Kieran?
Shout out Delta Upsilon fraternity. Shout out Team Gas for sure, and also Team Cutter Gas, the most broken thing to ever happen to Pokemon. Yeah, I think. Oh, Rip Kobe also, and I think that covered it all.
All right, Dallas.
Shout out to youtube.com/Dallas the Deal if you want to see a dormant YouTube channel with some openings and stuff on it. Go over there, show it some love. Shouts out to Power to the Poi Pole and Pa, Aaron Freese, JR, Nick Foltz for testing running decks with me, and shouts out Team Gas and Frank and Kieran spearheading the campaign to get me on here. I'm really stoked. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And shout out Potown Store also.
Potown Store. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all for coming on the channel. Like Kieran helped me out. Shout out to PotownStore.com. Use code Celio 5% for your codes. FlipsideGaming.com. Use code Celio all caps for 10% off there. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the content. And like I said, I'll be doing another one of these next week when we're a little bit closer to Collinsville. So let me know about decks you want to hear more about, or cards and decks that we missed, just anything you'd want to hear in next week's version of this expanded discussion, which will be a little more focused in on Collinsville since we'll be a little bit closer to it. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.